you know who is our martyr? Freaking Briana Taylor. Because that shit, at least
because
with George Floyd,
there might have been a drug dealer in her apartment complex. Maybe there might have been one.
Well, the funny thing is the guy. So for people that don't know the Briana Taylor case, just a brief overview. She was an essential worker. She was an EMT. She like won awards for like how good she was.
And she was on the way to being a nurse. Like she was,
an upstanding citizen of society,
an impeccable human being.
And in the middle of the night, police broke into her apartment by force. They busted down her door.
It's called a no-knock warrant.
Yeah, they had a no-knock warrant. They busted down her door because they were looking for someone that apparently had drugs or something like that.
Someone they thought was at that address.
Yes. Her boyfriend got up and called 911. Actually, the first thing he did was call 911. Little did he know that the police were the ones at his door. Then he got his gun, and I believe he was the one who fired the first shot at the police officers because there was intruders in his home.
I mean, anyone would do that, right?
I mean, I think
if I had a gun and someone busted into my door, you better bet your ass they're going to get blasted.
Especially if they have guns,
they're going to get blasted. I'm not going to take time to think about, is that a cop? No, I'm blasting. You're in my house.
Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Always Sunny meme. So anyways, I started blasting. And so he shot at police. Police shot back and fired something like 24 shots, 8 of which shot Briana, killed Briana. The boyfriend was then taken into custody and arrested.
He was charged
for something. He was arrested.
He was charged for shooting a cop.
Yeah, basically. And
even though the cops were the ones that busted into his house.
Exactly. And the icing on the cake, the real straw that broke the camel's back there is the guy that they were looking for had already been arrested previously that day and was already in police custody. So the whole thing was unnecessary because the guy that they were quote unquote looking for
was already
in jail. So the whole thing was 100% unnecessary. And it's like, now you can't put the toothpaste back in the toothpaste bottle. You know, it's like, you can't undo any of this. Brianna's dead. The boyfriend luckily has had the charges removed, but the police just tried to straight up cover it up and silence the voices. And that story is something that has probably happened so many times, but didn't get the attention that it deserved. Because when you quote unquote, like Candace Owens wants to say like, well, if you look at the statistics and blah, blah, blah. Well, the thing is, like we were talking about earlier, is like when you run an internal investigation on your own company and no one is running any sort of checks and balances on this shit.
What's the accountability, right?
There's no accountability. So in the case of Briana Taylor, it's been 3 weeks
months.
3 months since that investigation started. And yesterday they released their investigation, their documents, and it was 4 pages, should have been hundreds of pages, and most of it is blank.
It's empty, yeah.
And when it said injuries for Briana Taylor, it literally said none on the sheet. Like the level of incompetence is maddening, and the only explanation I have is that they are literally just trying to spit in the faces of all the protesters and her family.
Well, this is what I think it is. In order to get that investigation out, right, there has to be someone their job is to compile that information. Their job is also, they're an internal person. Their job is also to talk to all the police and try to get them to cooperate. Dude, no one wants to admit guilt ever, and that's the problem.
No, and you can invoke the fifth. You cannot say anything.
And
you can say I invoke my right.
And that's the big thing. Well, there's also this thing called something immunity. I forget what it's called, but I'll chat on that later. This is something that Andrew and I were arguing about earlier, and I said something and then stepped it back, but I'm making it very clear now. In the context of internal investigations and in the context of police investigations, and especially an internal police investigation, nothing ever happens ever. Like the guaranteed way to get people to shut up and leave you alone is to say, we've opened up an investigation, we're looking into it. But it's like, that's literally like me stealing some shit and be like, you got caught, you stole stuff. Be like, no, I did it. I'm opening up an investigation. I'm looking into it.
I will let you know if I stole some stuff.
I'll let you know. And then later I'll give you a written report. Be like, I was walking down the road. I bent down to tie my shoe. I kept walking. I did not steal from that store. And then I give you my official investigation and say, see, look, I didn't steal. I did an investigation. I gave you the papers, and look, I'm innocent. I didn't steal.
That's the problem with the American police system, is that it seems like cops are the only ones who are like allowed to break the law. I mean, you hear it all the time. Like, you get pulled over for speeding, and like a cop pulls you over, and you're like, "Oh, dude, I'm a cop too." And they're like, okay, go on."
I've heard of cops letting other cops go because they had higher ranking than them, but they were like in the middle of a DUI. They were blasted drunk.
Yeah,
and they were like,
well, because if you think about it, dude, like it's kind of similar to like Jeffrey Epstein. It's like, why didn't these people speak out? Because they knew that they were young. I'm just a 16-year-old girl. What am I gonna say? This guy's a billionaire and would threaten my family's life. I mean, like, he did crazy things. He would get people to leave like severed cat heads on people's doorsteps to silence them and shit. Like, he would literally leave like a single bullet on people's doorsteps to just be like, watch the fuck out and don't say shit.
Like silent
Vanity
forms of
Fair.
intimidation.
Vanity Fair was gonna. This was in the first episode. Vanity Fair was gonna run an article about him. And when the journalist went to, because it was supposed to be a lifestyle piece, like, oh, let's do a thing on Jeffrey Epstein in New York City. He's like this really famous guy, but no one really knows anything about him. Let's
rich philanthropist who hangs
let's
out
learn
with
more about this guy.
Yeah.
He seems really interesting. And then it was like, yo, actually, by the way, I know these girls that have a really crazy story about Jeffrey Epstein. You should go talk to them. And then that opened up a whole can of worms of all this pedophilia stuff.
And they found all the investigations that happened down in Miami. And
yeah. So anyways, but then Vanity Fair didn't run the article the way that the journalist wanted it to, because they were getting death threats and stuff. Like, the editor got death threats. The head of Vanity Fair was getting death threats. She was getting death threats. It's like, at one point they're like, hey, it's not worth it. And also our legal team is not big enough to take on this guy. So we're just not going to run the story. And that's what sucks. And that's another big thing with the judicial system too. We have this like crazy system of like bail, where you can just pay enough once they set a certain amount of money. Like, oh yeah, your bail is $1 million. For people that have $1 million, they're like, cool, I'm getting out of jail now.
People that have, so let me put it, I heard this is a great quote. So it's not even a quote. So I read it on the internet. So obviously take it with a grain of salt.
So obviously it's true.
So there was this girl, she was saying that she knew a guy in college who would continually commit crimes. He would park in no parking zones. He would litter. He would steal things, etc. And he would always refer to them of how much it costs. Be like, oh, that's a no parking zone. He's like, oh, a ticket's $95, but like it only costs $95 to park there. Like, he would steal something, be like, oh, that only costs $500. Like,
if you get caught.
Like, all of his crimes were dollar amounts, and he would just do crimes that were like under $1,000.
That reminds me of the Dave Chappelle thing, where he's like, black people are experts in law and also the punishments of law. He's like, don't do that, man. That's 5 to 10.
Don't do that. He's like, an old dude will pop out of nowhere and be like, don't do that. That's 5 to 10. He's like, we know the law. We know the law and the penalties.
Yeah, exactly.
That's messed up, man.
And yeah, and that's the hardest thing about all this is like, we need something that, who polices the police, you know? That's not our job. That shouldn't be the citizen's job. And it's becoming very, very, very blatantly obvious over the past couple weeks in America, police have gone mad with power. They are not afraid to use police brutality, even when there's cameras rolling, even
military grade police brutality. Yeah, they are full on like driving around in tanks.
Well, that's the National Guard
with battle gear and stuff like that.
That's National Guard, but the same thing is happening with police, because
police are militarized.
They're giving them military grade stuff. I mean, even tear gas, it's a war crime.
Yeah.
But we're using it against our own citizens. Like, we've deemed it too cruel to use in times of war, but we'll use it against our own citizens. It's so messed up.
I saw a funny thing. It's like, if the United States saw what the United States was doing to its own citizens, it would send the military to the United States to liberate itself from itself.
Yeah, 100%.
And we've done this before. We've literally gone into countries that are having this type of disruption and helped stabilize them, quote unquote,
Yep.
by going in there
And having military presence.
either like killing or overthrowing or having military presence or whatever the situation is. And it's like, and then we've got this president who is constantly escalating and egging on and causing problems. And even to go back to the cops thing too, it's like, there's this thing called blue lining where it's basically like if you try to like narc or snitch or like, you know, try to get one of your fellow cops in trouble, like you get personally attacked, your family gets attacked, dude, I knew a guy, this is a story, they found a way to fire him, to steal from him, and to get him permanently institutionalized in a mental health facility.
Oh yeah.
Because they were able to like manipulate the system in such a way to like literally try to call him a crazy person and prove that he was crazy, but he was just exposing people.
Exactly, man.
Dude, it's
and that would be the scariest part of being a police officer, and that's why people are like, good cops need to call out bad cops. It's like,
you can't.
The people that call out the cops, like, they're gonna get so bullied because that's what the cops are. For a lot of people, is the cops are bullies. And if you think about it, a lot of people that would be again, this is stereotyping, but again, being a cop is not something that you were born into. It's not the color of your skin. It's not your sexual orientation. It is something that you chose. So if you're offended by this, I don't care.
But let's be honest real quick. It's always someone's second or third choice.
Probably.
Just like a person, like a personal trainer.
The type of person that would be like a school bully is also probably the type of person that would want to be a cop.
Hope you enjoyed that clip. If you'd like to see the full episode, click right here. If you'd like to subscribe, click here. If you'd like more clips, we got 2 more right over here.